Hey, wanted to make sure that I didn't. I'm a little ill. I started to realize I was getting sick. So I had to take a day off work. I very rarely take a day off work. But I realized I was like, no, 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 no. You're about to, probably by evening, I'll be a mess. So you could probably hear it a little. I want to make sure to touch on Unto Thee I Grant. So the Circle 7 Quran, with its various other titles. This book that really, I do like the way that it was put by somebody who does like Noble Drew Ali. I forget whose channel this was. I did my research. It's like I looked into the people and who was still into them and shit. And this person actually defended it as it was an assembled work, because actually it does say this. When you actually have a copy of the Circle 7 Quran, apparently at one point it says assembled by. So it does not say authored by. So in this way, that this was sort of this idea of, this was what he found to be wisdom that he thought he should form an organization around. So to some degree, with lodge systems and reading circles, as really some people would maybe put it, as just a very, very active reading circle and charity organization. Like the Knights of Pythias is down the street from where I live. So you never know what it actually is that's a part of their, say, oh, I cannot believe I'm forgetting the word. Not a syllabus, but the content of say courses taught, where then you get organizations that are quasi-Masonic as well, say like Circe, and Timothy Hogan's Templar Ishinatik, where those are really courses. You really, obviously, this is like 4 years of research work, that you have to do on various religions and such. So I thought it was thought it'd be interesting. Well, this is apparently something that would be a curriculum. There we go. That a lot of organizations don't seem to have necessarily a curriculum or necessarily some type of system. It's the rituals that are actually the pith of what they do. And yeah, so I don't really do anything that is like a ritual system of spiritual anything any longer. You are joining a body that practices a set of rituals when you do so. So you really have to be a part of it. It can't just be like a social club you're a part of, in my view. So here's an example of what would be a part of the Circle 7 Quran from the Unto Thee I Grant. Now, if you were saying Amorc in the Rosicrucian group, this would have been, this is actually the copy that comes out of them, from their publishing. Book 1, The Obligations that Relate to Man Considered as an Individual. Chapter 1, Consideration. Commune with thyself, O man, and consider wherefore thou wert made. Contemplate thy powers, contemplate thy wants and thy connections. So shalt thou discover the duties of life and be directed in all thy ways. Proceed not to speak or to act before thou hast weighed thy words, and examine the tendency of every step thou shalt take. So shall disgrace fly far from thee, and in thy house shall shame be a stranger, repentance shall not visit thee, nor sorrow dwell upon thy cheek in this or many lives to come. The thoughtless man bridleth not his tongue. He speaketh at random, and is tangled in the foolishness of his own words. as one who runneth in haste and leapeth over a fence may fall into a pit on the other side, which he doth not see. I love the language they used for this. So is the man that plungeth suddenly into any action before he hath considered the consequences thereof, and the compensation which the law will exact. Hearken therefore unto the voice of consideration. Her words are the words of wisdom, and her path shall lead thee to safety and truth. Chapter 2. Modesty. Who art thou, O man, that presumest on thine own wisdom? Or why dost thou vaunt thyself on thine own acquirements? The first step towards being wise is to know that thou art born mortally ignorant. And if thou wouldst not be esteemed foolish in the judgment of others, cast off the folly of being wise in thine own mortality. As a plain garment best adorneth a beautiful woman, so a decent behavior is the greatest ornament of inner wisdom. The speech of a modest man giveth lustre to the truth, and the diffidence of his words absolveth his error. He relieth not on his mortal wisdom, he weigheth the counsels of a friend, and receiveth the benefit thereof. He turneth away his ear from his own praise, and believeth it not. He is the last in discovering his own perfections. Yet as a veil addeth to beauty, so are his virtues set off by the shade which his modesty casteth upon them. But behold the vain man, observe the arrogant. He clotheth himself in rich attire. He walketh in the public street. He casteth round his eyes, and courteth observation. He tosseth up his head, and overlooketh the poor. He treateth his inferiors with insolence. His superiors in return look down on his pride and folly with laughter. He despiseth the judgment of others. He relieth on his own opinion, and is confounded. He is puffed up with the vanity of his imagination. His delight is to hear and to speak of himself all the day long. He swalloweth with greediness his own praise, and the flatterer in return eateth him up. So, I mean, there's a lot to this book. This is like 70 some pages of this. And then it's kind of interesting that what then happens is some notes on the terms used in the manuscript. This is where then like Amorc adds all their, oh, this word means this, and when they say God, they mean this, and when they say this, they mean this. And it's kind of interesting because I'm like, actually, this is obviously a Protestant Christian treatise. And of course, once, I looked into it on like Wikipedia or something, and then there was, what Angel Millar found about it. And yeah, it's like, no, this is an old book of manners. But once there was a thing called, there were manners. People had manners, and there would be books on manners, and women would read them, and they would like be all inspired to teach their children how to have high manners. This was a real thing, like high manners. One of the things that I've actually come to consider about the secret societies is that just as when you enter the East Asian martial arts, it's this warrior mindset. Well, the idea is that that's called warlord. There were warlords. This idea of like the chevalier with his high-mindedness and such like. No. You just had soldiers who killed people. Violence is violence. The nobility part of it is something that we've had to hold up, because when you have enough men to kill quite a number, like this could, side A could just menace your villages and burn your fields. But instead, they're fighting warriors to warriors. They're keeping no women, no children. They're keeping the women and children out of it. They're keeping the peasants out of it. Because the peasants, the serfs and the slaves, they are like the birds. They're like dogs. They come with the land. So it's extraordinarily cruel to kill them. The warring against civilians was seen as increasingly dishonorable, especially among Europeans. That because they couldn't resolve why they were mad, they were taken as slaves by Moors, and then still go after civilians. So more and more, this became an issue of honor. You really should leave the civilians be. This is more about the soldiery. Kill the soldiers. It was the Enlightenment or post-Enlightenment, British Civil War, stuff like that. That you see all this fail. In the French Revolution, you see this fail. Humans, so I thought of this from the Buddhist perspective. People want to be noble. They want to find that which will not just ennoble themselves, but is so helpful. They will then be able to read this book. It will be as if you've polished yourself and you shine. Like Gurdjieff had said, apparently in response to somebody talking about their ideas or their system, but does it work? East Asian martial arts, this comes up, confronted by the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people, but that shit doesn't work, bro. And the idea is that this also has to do with the application of secrets and techniques, or as the Buddhists would say, application of skillful means. Say the ability to read people's faces, like to read the muscle tics where their eyes move, things like that, right? Body language. That's skillful means. That needed time to evolve, till not only could it be perfected, but then disseminated. Well, if you were a warlord 1,000 years ago, you probably knew how to read people's body language. You had to train soldiers. They had to be disciplined. You had to detect usurpers and assassins and things like that. So you had to detect duplicity in allies. And so we have books on manners. That he even says he tosseth his head about. That his eyes look round, so that he knows people are watching him. Men, young men, you've probably been in situations like this. Especially there's certain populations that esteem vanity. What they will tend to go into driving of fast cars. They will go into doing performances in sport that can be seen by women. Things like that. That there's certain populations that beyond race, there's various populations in the American history that they are more vain than other people. They even have songs about vanity, such as "You're So Vain," things like that. Think about who has notoriously, unbelievably well-styled hair. Go back over 40 years, 50, 60 years of music. Who really shows out and shows that they're obviously a culture that esteems a bit of vanity? All of these things are things that you just slowly watch because the accumulated wisdom of people, ideas from different people, you assort them and you can apply them, and you get then a way of viewing your world. And so I just thought it would be fair to say, so there's a line in Wu-Tang Clan, and you don't know no fucking lessons. And it's a reference to the 120 lessons. See, people probably don't think I do my research. And now the 120 lessons, don't know what they are. Never gone and looked for any books or anything on it. I figured that's for that cultus. That's for that group. Let them have their thing. Um, but I do think it's important that people get this idea. If you're a part of a church, if you're a part of a Christian body, some of you maybe are pagans who watch my channel, or you're a part of some other kind of organization or something else, or you're just a person who's into kind of spirituality. In the West, it's always been attached to philosophy. The Greeks got something from Egypt, but what they made was philosophy. Whatever the ancient, super ancient Greeks did, or Egyptians did, nobody knows. Like, no one knows. They literally, they didn't, it slowly washed out of their society. We have some ideas of their magical rites, books by like Wallace and stuff, but we don't know. I mean, we know a lot, but we don't know a lot because it wasn't passed on mouth to ear. There's a lot about Christianity that now people are turning away from it because the mouth to ear part of it was not passed on. But as the monks would say, father but a word, abbot but a word, and that you would be given one phrase from the Bible, and you would go and you would contemplate this, because this father knew you so well. He knew this is probably what you're looking for. This is the piece of wisdom that I believe you're looking for. That's real connection. This scares a lot of people, and they'll talk about connections like this in a way that they're like, oh, we're the Satan and the dark power and stuff, and there's lots of, and it's because of the very scientific mind, certain cultures that, the Calvinists and certain cultures that attracts, certain mentalities about what Christianity and what the Western mind is, that really, like, Italians would have a different view than people of German descent. But then, say, after 4 generations of being in America, would they? Well, we'll start finding out in probably about another 2 generations as people look back and they look at all these weird denominations of Christianity and emergent Christianity, the new occult Christianity. Say things like the wisdom of the Desert Fathers. This is frowned upon by a lot of modern Christians. Seeing it as more something out of some kind of Egyptian, pagan, monastic, mystical thing, and it's like, oh, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong. You would just be wrong. What you're jealous of the mouth-to-ear wisdom that was well recorded in this. And that after all this time, you haven't come up with anything better. Your system doesn't work, Protestants, to a great extent. People ask, why would the Catholics stay with the Catholic Church? Their system works. They still have mouth-to-ear wisdom. It's not about the priests. They're carrying out rituals that even a lot of the people are like, oh, this ritual sucks. I like the old-fashioned rituals. No, those were the real thing. But good thing is that this is more about us than, the guy in the skirt. So I've just been, just rolling around. I want to be fair about making sure people understand, like, say something like, unto thee I grant. It isn't a bunch of like, and then the white man made the dingo, and the dingo, and Dr. Yakub, it's not, no, there's actually a lot of this that goes back to an era where people were just they were higher cultured because they wanted to have the nobility of those who descended from the warlords, who eventually were able to have books on shelves. They were the first literates.
All these peasants who end up becoming Americans, these Scots-Irish slaves, commanded over by the Anglo-Saxons and the French. And eventually this small bunch of Africans who are brought over. Like, even the Native Americans were brought into Scottish Rite Freemasonry by the creator himself of Scottish Rite Freemasonry in America, Albert Pike. He had a fixation on the 5 civilized tribes and bringing them into the fold because they needed to form a covenant between man. They needed that closeness that can only be gained through spirituality. This is at least with like how the Kabbalists at present argue it. Without people having a spiritual binding, without this invisible chain of understanding, like for those of us who are Christians, we all are living within the everlasting life of God. We're in this thing called the everlasting life. We look at everything now, and there's these things over our eyes, and they're everlasting life lenses. So we have to view things in terms of that which should exist into eternity and be celebrated at present, because it gives glory to the creator of all time and the universe. And that which is a stumbling block must be removed so that nobody can stumble over this, which keeps them from living into eternity with the creator. Know that it is the duty to try to bring everybody in to harmony with the where physical life and the spiritual life come into harmony, and that there gives glory to God. That's why he did all this, so that we could all be happy. We could all play together happily. We could all engage in various projects like making bridges and baking bread and having communities, and not be at odds with one another. And that what coincides with this is noble behavior. You don't get that spiritual connection unless there is noble behavior, unless there's principles that people are agreeing to, that they will act upon. What is charitable? Well, until you agree in some way, shape, or form what even the word charity is, what is charitas, then nothing else matters. Doesn't matter if giving somebody $100 or giving them a boot in the ass. Either can be charity until you agree on the term. And so I just kind of like this, that at present there is a massive confusion happening in our society, and I think it's worthy for people to fight for what they believe in. They should espouse their views. You should comment angrily at people you disagree with, but make them understand like exactly why you disagree with them. Because at some point, all things will come into some type of harmony. Or they'll come into harmony, or they'll spin into chaos. And I just really have found humans are kind of like children. There's only so long we could hold tantrums for. At some point, we really do want to. We want order, and we want to get along. The chicks want to do arts and crafts. They want to bake bread. And then they want to all compare their arts and crafts with each other and all sit around eating bread and talking about how yummy their bread is. So, it's kind of up to us guys to make that happen. And that's why men form spiritual organizations run by men, so that we don't have to be warlords.